help us understand, one, where do we go from here? I mean, what's the next battle? Am I being too cynical in saying that these colleges are not going to follow at least the spirit of the ruling? And if so, where do we go?
No, you're asking the right question. There's no such thing as too cynical when it comes to various leftist woke institutions' attempts to get around this right of center court's holdings on this and various other issues as well, I might add. So, look, there's a few things that should be said. First of all, what you described there, this kind of taking race into account as part of a quote unquote holistic view, that is what the court reaffirmed in the Grutter case at the University of Michigan in 2003. But Grutter was overturned. I mean, let's not mince words. Grutter was overturned by the Harvard, University of North Carolina decisions. I mean, there was no way to read the majority opinion by Chief Justice Roberts in any other way as to conclude that even the use of race as part of a holistic process is verboten. I mean, it simply is not permitted. And, Roberts has this paragraph towards the end of his opinion. He's responding to a line from the dissents. And, he says, if universities try to get around this indirectly, it is still unconstitutional to get around that which we today hold unconstitutional directly. And he cites kind of this example of talking about race in an admissions essay. Now, it's true that you can talk about race in an admissions essay. You can talk about it. That is not specifically illegal. But if there's any subjective intent by a university admissions officer of actually using that as a thumb on the scale, that is illegal. That's unconstitutional. And one thing that I've found reassuring as I've kind of dug into this a little more, I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain I'm not wrong, that university admissions officers under this current regime, they will be personally liable for monetary damages, actually. If kind of a white or Asian or Jewish applicant, perhaps in particular, thinks that he or she has been wrongfully denied, they can actually sue these admissions officers because those officers cannot be indemnified by their employers, i.e. their universities, for the very simple reason that this conduct of taking race into account is itself illegal. You cannot indemnify for illegal activity. So, if you think about kind of the crass incentives, very basic incentives that drive human life, not wanting to be sued up your butt for monetary damages is a fairly compelling incentive that I think should dissuade a lot of this. Now, here's the one thing that the ruling probably does not touch, and which we will probably see a lot of, is just using other kind of proxies, right? I mean, there's nothing in the opinion that forbids the use of socioeconomic status, right? So, so if universities want to do some sort of newfound affirmative action for poorer Americans, they can do that. But, once you start showing that they're focusing on poor Americans from, largely black areas like urban Detroit or urban St. Louis, and not necessarily kind of poor white areas like Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, that's where we might start to have problems. But they might try to get around this by kind of other proxies like that. But again, if there is any indication whatsoever that there is subjective intention of taking race into account, that is illegal. And already we've seen some nice statements put out by Stephen Miller's America First Legal and some other organizations basically announcing that these right-of-center conservative legal funds and watchdogs are now on constant vigilance. So, I find that reassuring as well. But you're not right, Brandon. We have not seen the last of this litigation. To an extent, also, it's going to just have to play out in the lower courts over the next few years as well.